going to be incredible. He's somebody that I've known for a very long time. He helps people and organizations craft their stories. He helps take these nebulous things, these nebulous concepts. We're all trying to craft our own personal stories. We're all trying to craft stories for our businesses. He helps you form that narrative in a way that others will understand, that others will be able to internalize, that others will be able to take action on. I'll make sure to get his bio right here. He's one of the world-leading experts in narrative strategy. He's a 2X TEDx speaker, strategic advisor to Silicon Valley, cultural anthropologist, Amazon #1 best-selling author, and story philosopher. He's a pioneer of breakthrough models to messaging innovation and large-scale change. He's left-handed, colorblind, and eats more chocolate than, this is the average human. He eats more chocolate than any human. I've witnessed it. It's kind of crazy to watch. Please give a big welcome to my good friend, our opening keynote for the day of day 2, Michael Margolis.
To any of you who don't know me, I'm Stub Toe Guy. Yeah. And you're going to see a running theme. This is not me, Stub Toe Guy. I didn't spend the night in the hospital last night, don't worry. I recovered. But this was actually me just a few months ago. I went in for a routine surgery with not-so-routine complications. Put me in the hospital for 8 days. I was in and out of the emergency room. Went in for one of those like bionic upgrades. Okay, you get to a certain age and you start to need them. So I spent my 40th birthday in a hospital. Now, here's the interesting thing. While I was in the hospital, and it was a pretty brutal process of what was going on, there's not much to do. So, like most of us, I pull out my phone, I start geeking out. And this was during the big March for Science. You guys remember that? Any of you guys part of that Facebook group? Woo! Awesome. Okay, so I decided to start geeking out. And so on the day of the march, I was looking through my Facebook feed, and I saw a friend of mine come up with a post that was similar to this. And I thought, oh, you know what? Let me go into the March for Science Facebook group, which was the fastest growing Facebook group in human history. All right, it's got, back then it was 819,000 members, and it's way over 1 million now. And here's what I wrote. My dad is the chemical engineer who invented the natural decaffeination process for coffee. Yay for science, yay for dads, yay for decaf that doesn't taste like shit. March for Science, way to rock the protest, 400 cities today. All right, and it was incredible. The responses that I got, and this doesn't do justice to it, but a lot of people were like, oh my God, thank your dad for me. Others were pretty incredulous. That is not coffee. I hate your dad. He should go to jail. I mean, it was amazing the things that people started to say. And then others, if I didn't have decaf, I couldn't have gotten through my 3 pregnancies for my kids, or I have some crazy allergy, one thing after another. And so, you know, as a guy who's sitting in the hospital in a lot of pain, there was something about this. Okay? So then I thought, all right, a few days later, I'm still in a hospital bed. I decided to post the following. Same group. What's a contribution to science that one of your loved ones has made? A parent, a grandparent, a spouse, or crazy uncle? Share your story, and let's celebrate all the ways, big, small, silly, scary, smelly, that our funny monkey species keeps innovating life. P.S. I'm the guy who shared about my dad inventing the natural decaffeination process for coffee. Seems to have struck a nerve. Your turn. Okay? You see how I use things like stubbing my freaking toe as a way to connect with people? Okay, so here we go. I shared this. The stories that people then responded with. My mother invented the fuel that put America's first satellite into orbit. Her story is in the book Rocket Girl. Look up her Wikipedia page. All right? Dad was no slouch. He was an engineer at Rocketdyne, where he developed the directional rockets for the space programs. My grandfather worked at Borg Warner. He started shoveling coal and ended leading a substantial engine component design team as an engineer. On and on and on. Within a matter of hours, there were over 500 of these stories. Okay? Not only was I brought to tears, but many other people commenting were brought to tears. Okay? Odds are, whatever community you're leading, all the incredible ways you create engagement. Okay? And there are some Jedis in this room. Okay? Spending time with you guys yesterday, learning from all of you, learning from you today. You guys are Jedis with what you're doing in community building. But I have a question to pose to you, and one that I hope as you continue through the rest of this session, I'm going to take you through a little interactive exercise as well, to be thinking about how are you unlocking the power of story in your community? Do the people in your community really know each other's stories? Okay. And by the way, when I shared this to my dad, he's a real humble guy. He was like, oh, Michael, well, you know, I can't take credit for that. You know, there was a whole team that was a part of that. I'm like, Dad, your name's on the patent. No. Right? So there's this interesting thing, too, about many of us have a hard time owning our story. All right? I'm the one who has to tell that story about my dad. He won't tell you that story. Okay? So start thinking about that. I'll take a step even further. Communities are the stories we share in common. Literally, that's what makes a community. What are the stories we share in common? Whether those are the stories that we inherit, right, from our family, from our religion, that's what builds a community, or the stories about, man, did you go to that Grateful Dead show? Man, I saw them at Shoreline back in '93. That was incredible, right? We all have these different stories, but it's the fact that we have stories that we share in common. That's what builds a community. That's what takes any ordinary group and turns it into something more. Okay? So this is a little bit about really, you can get a sense, this has been really my quest for the last 15 plus years. As a narrative strategist, I started my career actually as a social entrepreneur, working on issues related to poverty, race, and the digital divide. This was back in the late 90s, right at the birth of the internet. And I had a lot of very quick early success, funded by Ford and Rockefeller foundations, and thought I was kind of a hot shot, and within 18 months it ate me alive. Epic crash and burn. And it was actually picking up those pieces that got me into doing this work. Asking myself, what is it about innovation that gets so easily lost in translation? What is it about the human experience that there's something about that's so hard to tell the stories? Many of you are working with communities where when you really look at people's lives, we have a hard time talking about our lives. Okay? And of course, social media is changing this game. We're going to frame it in that context. And some of the kinds of work, these days I do a lot of work in the Valley with Facebook and Google and Genentech and a lot of venture-backed startups who are dealing with disruptive technologies that need to humanize them, right? As well as how do you activate your constituencies all through the power of story, translating product roadmaps, investor pitches, town halls. There are so many opportunities in places. And in fact, these are the kinds of things. Product roadmaps, quarterly business reviews. So the next time you're in a quarterly business review and you need to talk about the power and the impact of what you're doing with your community, right? How are you going to frame that narrative? And let me tell you, if you start with the data, your story's dead on arrival. Dead. Because people don't have the context or the emotional connection to that data. First question they're going to ask you if you start with the data is, well, hold on, how'd you come up with that data? I think there's a different way to, right? They start arguing with you when you're like, holy crap, stop. Wait a second, I got this great story about this community and what we're doing. Don't start with the data. You need the data. There's a couple other things to do first to set up the story for success, okay? But You guys know some of these contexts: a pitch presentation, innovation design, and then obviously community management. There's a unique moment in human history that we're in right now that makes the work that we're all doing here around community building so incredibly important. And I would go so far to say that social media, from a storytelling perspective, is just as important, if not more, than the printing press. Because what this has done is it's democratized storytelling. Democratize it. Everybody has a story. Everybody wants to tell their story. It just didn't come with an operating manual. So there's a lot of messy ways we share our story. A lot of, frankly, ignorant, stupid, ego-masturbatory ways we tell our story. Okay? So just imagine if you actually had a way to get people to start sharing their stories in a manner that brought them together, like March for Science, or like you're about to experience in just a minute. Now, I've had the privilege over the last year and a half of working very closely with Facebook, with several other product teams, including Facebook groups. And part of what they recognize and what David spoke to about the change in their mission statement, there's a fundamental shift happening with the internet right now. If you think about Facebook just as a reference point, it used to be we connected with people on Facebook who were our friends. Okay? We're in a new era, a new chapter of connecting, where we're now connecting with strangers. Okay? And that's part of what you're doing. Okay? And that's part of what Facebook Groups supports, because there's a lot of things going on in our lives where we go, how many of you, show of hands, how many of you hesitate before you post something on your public feed in front of your parents, your family, your work friends, right? Because the context has collapsed. What might be relevant to some segment or section of your tribe or your network might actually offend another part. Or somebody else might go, whoa, that is TMI. So we're looking for these smaller pockets of places where we can have relevant conversations, where we can share. And we're also looking to go beyond the world of the people we already know. So anybody that tells you, how, the filter bubble of Facebook, and that's a very legitimate, reasonable concern, don't get distracted by that. There's something else fundamentally going on here we should be celebrating, we should be excited about, which is no matter what circumstances you are in your life, whatever is going on, right, in your direct surroundings, you can go online and you can transcend it. Whether that's a health issue, whether that's a new career aspiration, it doesn't matter. It's a place where actually you can connect to others like you. Okay? So this is the big game changer. Another organization I've done a bunch of work with is Directly. Any of you guys familiar with Directly? You guys should check them out. These guys are part of a customer support stack that's basically cracked the code on how do you access the knowledge of those who are closest to your product. Who is that? Your power users. And what if your power users were actually part of the customer support stack in between the self-service FAQ that's always out of date, all right, and the customer support reps halfway around the world that frankly are reading from a script and don't know the product. Okay? So they're using predictive algorithms to route questions that engage some of your most power users or members as part of this with all sorts of incentives and rewards. What I find really interesting about what they're doing is they're looking at how do you scale empathy in the age of automation. Okay? How do you scale empathy in the age of automation? Okay? And in many ways, that's what each of you are involved with as well, right? As community managers, oftentimes parts of much larger software as service products and platforms. All right, there's no greater agony than carrying an untold story. See, there's a part to this where you're trying to build community, but most people who join your communities don't know how to tell their story, haven't been invited to tell their story. I had an incredibly moving conversation with Lola over the last couple days, right, about that shift and her own experience growing up in Nigeria and the benefits that she had from her family of encouraging her to have a voice and an opinion. But many young girls, it's quite the opposite. And we might not feel the exact same in our own lives, but let me tell you, a lot of us have gotten messages where our story doesn't matter. Okay? So there's a process to how you help your members find their voice. And then obviously you need to sell the value proposition and ROI of your community. I'm here to suggest and to invite you into considering what role does storytelling play as an organizational capability. Okay? Many of you are intuitively incredible at storytelling, in drawing their stories out. Question is, have you actually organized this as a capability with a set of structures and principles so that you're not the only one who's doing this? Or even if you are, that you start to bring some logic to what you naturally just do intuitively. Okay? This is where a lot of companies are just starting to wake up to realize this is the DNA source code. And now, with this, let's give you guys an experience of this, because the hardest story to tell is whose? Your own. Okay, so let's explore. Okay, this is a superhero power. Okay, so in order for you to harness your superhero powers, we have to tap into your own superhero origins. Right? Think about this. There are a few superheroes that are born superheroes. We become a superhero based on circumstances, and then the choices that we make in the face of those circumstances. Right? Batman was 5 years old when he was in a dark alley and saw his parents gunned down before his very eyes. It was that moment, that inciting incident, that set him off on the quest. Right? It was a quest of wanting to balance the scales of justice using his family's fortune. Okay? So I'll tell you a little more of my own superhero story. It starts as a really awkward, gangly kid in Switzerland. First 9 years of my life, Lausanne, Switzerland. And when I was 9.5 years old, my family moved to a foreign land, Los Angeles, California. I'm still recovering. Okay? Because this was me. Right? I was a nerd before it was cool to be a nerd. Okay? Anybody else remember those days? Anybody else identify with that? We had no idea better days were coming. Zero clue. All we knew was that our life was a big, giant pile of suck. That's all we knew. Okay? But then I would go home. See, my home was my refuge. Because this was my home. This was the family motto on the wall. Okay? Our home is an exploratorium. There are no rules on what or how to create. There's no one saying you can't do that, it's too crazy, or we've already tried that before. There's only imagination, the everyday materials of life, and our willingness to use them. This was the motto on the wall, thanks to my mom, Leslie. Pretty wild, huh? Okay. And this is the kind of stuff that we would build. This is an antique sewing box that we would turn into a pirate ship, all right? And I could tell you all sorts of things about all the materials of how this was made, including those little doilies that were a wedding present that my mother received and put in a drawer, and she's so not into doilies. They became the sails of our pirate ship. Okay? So this is my dad, okay? Mad scientist, inventor, chemical engineer, worked for Nestle for 20 years. That's what took us to Switzerland. And then this is my mom, a teacher, an artist, a toy designer. Okay? So I'm their mutant love child, if you haven't figured this out by now. Okay? All right. Who likes to stub his toes, who likes to spend a lot of time in the hospital, who likes his sippy cups. Okay? All right. But hopefully in that origin story, you get a little sense of the thread about what makes me tick, why innovation is so personal to me. Right? The creativity part comes easy. The question is, how are you going to translate it out into the world? right? So others see what you see, so others can receive that gift. That's the challenge to those of us who are innovators, creatives, change agents. So I want you all to grab, you've got a worksheet, okay? I want you to grab this worksheet, and you're going to have a chance to experience this. Turn it over, by the way. You want to turn it over to the 4 boxes that looks like a diamond. Okay, we're going to go through this real quick. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a series of questions, very quick, stream of consciousness. In a workshop format, we go through this with a lot more length of time and methodology. We're going to apply this methodology in the super short form, and you're going to be amazed at what we experience in just a few minutes. Okay, stream of consciousness. Question number 1, where were you born and raised? Okay, where were you born and raised? And not just the literal place. Think about how has that shaped how you see the world? Right. Is it a place you identify with? Is it a place that you couldn't wait to get the heck out of? Okay, where were you born and raised? All right. Okay. Question number 2. We're going to go quick here. Okay. Question number 2. Who are your parents? If you had to think of your parents based on their professions, based on their personalities, what are those forces that have shaped you? In what ways are you like them, and what ways are you different? And it can be whoever raised you, if it was an aunt and uncle or grandparents, whoever played that role for you, right? Primary maternal, paternal roles. Okay. Think about that for a moment. Usually whoever our parents are, by definition, we're running in the opposite direction. It's just part of the story of life. But, so what is it about them? And whatever their idiosyncrasies, whatever their quirks, whatever their failings, how have they shaped or influenced you? Question number 3. What have you studied in life? What have you studied in life? And this isn't just what degrees you've gotten, although that's fair game. This is also a question about what are you most curious about? What subjects or topics have you said, I want to know how that works? Okay. What do you geek out on? And again, just brainstorm a list. The subjects, the topics, it could be hobbies, interests. It doesn't have to be just professional. But the things that just amaze you. You could spend hours and hours exploring and studying and talking about. What are those subjects? Okay. All right. There's infinite material in these 3 questions. Okay, question number 4. I want you guys to circle question number 4 or put an asterisk next to it. This is the most important question. I've given you a couple warm-up questions. Okay. Now what I want you to do is I want you to answer the following. How can you explain your passion for community management, for community building? Okay? Your motivation around the vision of your company or what the work you're doing. Something about what's drawing you into the future. Perhaps something that came out of David's meditation, this exercise first thing this morning. What is it about where you're headed? All right? And what you're so passionate about that you can actually link back to your childhood or early moments in your career. Okay. What is it about that passion or motivation that actually has a red thread? Just take a moment, think about that. In what ways did that shape you, for the better, for the worse, to what you do now? Why is it so personal for you? Just think about that, and all you need is just a tiger by the toe. That's all you need for this. Don't worry about getting it perfect. All right? Okay, I'm going to keep us moving along here. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to get together with a partner. Okay? What you're going to do is you're each going to have 60 seconds to share your story. Okay? 60 seconds to share your story. Now, there's one more thing I'm going to point out to you guys because I just love giving you guys some really high value here and some principles. If you flip the sheet over, okay, there's a worksheet on story listening. If you want to get better at storytelling, get better at story listening, which is really being able to pay attention to how you receive someone's story. So there's 5 principles as a story listener that I want you to pay attention to. Number 1 is follow the energy. Where's the energy in this story? Number 2, where do you identify? Where do you identify in this story? Where are you going, oh, yeah, me too? Okay, those me too moments are critical. Okay? Number 3, where do you notice your partner, the storyteller, come to life? Where do they light up like a Christmas tree? Okay? Question number 4, what are the words that are like poetry? Damn, that was a good turn of phrase. Or there was something about it, very simple set of words, but those words just landed as truth. Okay? And then question number 5, questions. As you're listening, what are the questions that come up? Either curiosity, I want to know more of this, or questions that could be confusion. Wait, what happened here? Okay? So you've got a storyteller and a story listener. Okay? As a listener, I want you to jot down some notes as you're listening, paying attention to those 5 things. We're going to do this very quick. Okay? I want you to turn to a partner. Okay? And we're going to do this as a timed exercise. All right, start with storyteller number 1 and go. Do you feel the energy in the room right now? Okay? Do you see what's going on? These were 60-second shares. Okay? 60-second shares, and look at the territory, what you uncovered. Imagine if you could tap into that in your own communities. Okay, one more quick thing I want you guys to do here. You're each going to have a chance now to debrief these stories with your partner. 30 seconds each. Okay, a couple quick tips. Don't tell your partner that you think their story sucked. In all seriousness, I'm not too worried about it with you guys. But here's what I want you to do. In 30 seconds, just reflect back to the teller those 5 things. Where was the energy? Where did they light up? Where did you have a Me Too experience? Where was the poetry? And what questions? It's a one-directional share. It's just the listener now replaying back. Okay? As the teller, you don't get to answer or ask questions. Okay? Story number 1, 30 seconds, and I'll call when it's time to switch. Jump right in. Go. Okay, real quick, show of hands. Show of hands. How many of you discovered unexpected connections with your partner? Show of hands. Unexpected. Look around. Look around. Whoa. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Okay. There's something going on here. Okay? There's something going on here, and it is not because we're in a room full of community managers. Seriously. Okay? What I want you to do real quick, though, I'm going to give you quietly, just take 20 seconds on the story listening sheet. I want you to harvest any insights or ahas. Either something that you connected the dots on around your own backstory, or maybe something about story structure, or maybe you have an idea that you want to apply into your community. Just take a moment, because let me tell you, you just tapped into the mother lode right here. So just take a moment, harvest for just a few seconds. What do you want to take away from this? What do you want to further explore about this? In the words of Brené Brown, stories just might be data with a soul. Okay? Do not overlook this mother lode as you look to evangelize and champion and enroll people into the power of your community, especially internally. How can you make metrics how do you make stories actually part of the metrics of community building? Because I'll tell you, a lot of the C-level executives and VPs I talk to, They get this. They just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to access it. And here you have your thumb on the pulse of a community of relationships, of people who are dying to tell their story. Oh, going the wrong way here. Big narrative actually trumps big data. So, monthly recurring revenue, NPS of 72, MRR of 86, customer, so a coma of 523 and MLV of 650. What's the story? Real quick, anyone? Right? A lot of organizations, this is what we speak. All right? Buzzword bullshit bingo. Like what? Huh? Oh, yeah, I know what you just meant. No, I don't. Okay? We need these metrics. I'm not saying throw out the metrics, but remember, it's not the numbers, it's the story behind the numbers. Right? That's how you bring it to life. That's what Facebook came to us asking for. We have these stories of how people's lives are changed through Facebook. Everybody else loves to hate on Facebook. But we have these stories, but we don't know how to frame them. We don't know how to put those out into the world so people go, oh my God, I never thought of Facebook this way. Right? Think about the questions that people have about your platform, your community, your product, and how those stories is what you really want to unlock. Real quick, the science of storytelling. Here's what you need to know, real quick. Cortisol and oxytocin. Cortisol and oxytocin. These are the two basic hormones that are produced in a storytelling experience and interaction. Cortisol is fight or flight. This is the stress hormone. Okay? Oxytocin is the belonging molecule. This is where we draw our empathy from. Okay? Now, this is really important biologically speaking. And we're not aware that actually a lot of the things going on social media put us in a perpetual state of cortisol, fight or flight. Or when people arrive at one of your events, it's like the first day of kindergarten. Maybe that's how you felt when you came to this conference the first time, first few minutes you were here. People going to like me? I know that's how I felt. Right? I felt like that kid, Swiss Lederhosen boy in surfer skater culture. Right. I'm back in LA, oh my God. Right? Okay. Oxytocin is the belonging molecule. You don't create belonging overnight. So as I start to wrap up here, a couple closing pieces that I want to share with you guys here. That if you really care about building community, a sense of belonging and tribe, it actually starts with the story of self before people can get to the story of tribe. Don't overlook that. People, we take for granted all of our life experiences until somebody prompts us, gives us a safe structure to reveal ourselves. That's what you experienced in that exercise. That's why you went as deep as you went in 60 seconds. Okay? Forever bonded with your partner. How quickly you went from, hopefully, any of you were sitting next to or worked with a partner that you haven't really met with or interacted with at the conference yet? Okay? All right. Think about how quickly you went from stranger to hopefully BFF. All right? Okay? It's possible, okay? People get married like this, okay? No, all right. Not yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen. Okay, so remember, you got to start with identity. Help people. We're not even, see, the thing is, we don't know what story we're in anymore. So you have to help people through this story process of like, oh yeah, this is who I am. These are the experiences I've had. These are the values of what I believe in, right? Like David reminded us, what are your aspirations? Help remind your community and tribe, right, of what are your goals? What are their dreams? What is it they want more of in life? Okay. Talk about achievement. Like, what are the stories that are going to elicit people to share, right, their interests in their experiences? It's great to share a GIF of the day. Like, everybody post a GIF of how you're feeling today, or a GIF of, one GIF that symbolizes your childhood. Any of you guys do that in your community? Oh, try that. It's really fun. Okay? There's all sorts of fun little things that you can do, right, that give people the little baby steps towards self-expression, towards finding their voice, towards that sense of like, oh yeah, I have a story. I know who I am. Okay? And then you can throw down like the whoppers. Like the whoppers of, like, okay, what's one of the hardest things that's happened in your life that you've come to realize is one of the best things? Or you just have to think about the category that you're in, right? And then that's what ultimately gets people into those stories of belonging. Okay? See, most of us, we don't really know where we fit in or belong anymore. In 2015, 2016, I sold 90% of everything I owned, lived out of 2 carry-on bags, and I traveled and lived around the world. Okay? Part of that is, as a cultural anthropologist, it was the dream deferred for 20 years. Okay? And I got to do work everywhere I went, just the nature of our global clients. But there was a part of it, quite honestly, is the long walk home. Like, who am I in this world? And what happens when I don't use all the things in my life to tell the story for me? Right? And what is it as I go from India to Australia to Amsterdam to Vancouver, on down the line? Like, what are some of the universal aspects of life? Okay? Those universal truths. And how is technology shaping and influencing the ways where we realize, oh my God, everybody has a story. But we don't really know, as we get more and more opportunities where we more and more don't live in the small town we grew up in, right? Or take on the profession of our father and our grandfather or mother and grandmother and so on. As all those things start to splinter, it also means people don't know what story they're in anymore. And they're trying to figure out, are you my tribe? Do I belong here? Okay. You're not going to get them to make that leap unless you help them actually locate themselves in their own story. And after 500 days around the world, I fell in love, right? So I went from global nomad to family man, all right? And lo and behold, right, little 5.5-year-old girl just started kindergarten 2 weeks ago, okay? So that process of like how we find ourselves, this is the journey that every single person in your community is on. And, I hope you guys continue to carry this forward, to think about how can you further tap into this mother lode, right, as you carry the torch. Remember that story is the atomic unit of community. The atomic unit. This is the foundational building block and DNA to what you're doing. How are you going to build this as a capability? To support you with that, I'll share a couple other last things here. To learn about a culture, okay, you listen to the stories. If you want to change a culture, you change the stories. Right? So this is, again, the DNA source code. This is number 7 of 15 storytelling axioms that's in one of my books. You guys can all get a digital copy of this for free if you just go to getstory.com/CMX. And then we also have a few copies that are going to be available that we're giving away for free, right? We're going to do a signing, but I've got limited copies I was able to bring for you guys today. So kind of first come, any of you guys who want one of those. So go to this link if you'd like a free copy of the book. I teach a lot on this work. Next masterclass is in San Francisco, October 26th, if you want to go deeper into this. But more than anything, I would really love to help harvest in this community all the ways that you are intuitively and strategically unlocking the stories of community. Because that's the thing that I think is one of the most important stepping stones to not only how you activate your community, but also how you're going to educate, inspire, and influence all of the top executives in your organization. In the words of Ira Glass, great stories happen to those who can tell them. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, my contact info is up here. CMX, thank you guys. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you. Thank you.